Good afternoon. Welcome to the Monday, April 27th Selectmen's meeting. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll approve the warrants. Somebody want to do, make a motion for the warrant?
Yeah, I'll do it. Motion to approve payroll warrant 20-43 in the amount of $152,537.42.
Second.
Any further discussion? None? All in favor? Unanimous.
Motion to approve bill warrant number 20-43 in the amount of $229,240.71, which breaks down to town, $23,554.05, water and sewer, $15,172.52, payroll withholding, $7,264.50, light bills, $172,422.43, and grants and revolving, $10,827.21.
Second.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? None. All in favor? Unanimous. Approval of the minutes. And one thing that was missing was the public comment wasn't listed on here, but there's nobody here.
We haven't included it with the non-public meetings.
Okay, approval of the minutes, minutes for March 30th, 2020.
Move to approve the minutes for March 30th, 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? None. All in favor? Unanimous. Minutes of April 6th, 2020.
Move to approve the minutes of April 6th, 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? None. All in favor? Unanimous. Appointments. Reinstatement of Joseph Cummings to of Haverhill to the position of part-time seasonal groundskeeper at the cemetery, effective April 28th, 2020, at an hourly rate of $12.75.
Motion to approve the reinstatement of Mr. Joseph Cummings of Haverhill to the position of part-time seasonal groundskeeper at the cemetery, effective April 28th, 2020, at the hourly rate of $12.75 an hour.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Yes, I am recusing myself from the vote as my husband, Michael
Sure.
Castronellis, is the cemetery commissioner.
Okay. All in favor? Yes. 3 in favor, 1 abstention.
Recused.
Discussion and possible vote. COVID-19 discussion. Claire, I guess that's you.
Yes,
You're
it
up.
is. Thank you. Numbers are still low. We're at 11, so we've gained 2 over the last week. People in Groveland are doing a fabulous job of abiding by all the restrictions that have been placed. And we know it's difficult, it's frustrating, but it's working, and it's keeping us more healthy than a lot of other places. So we're happy about that. Right now, we have 3 homes still on quarantine. One of them has been on quarantine for quite a while now because one person contacted it. Then, a couple of weeks later, someone else did. And then a week later or so, another person did. So it's kind of like gone on. So there's one person that hasn't really come off of it, out of that group. And then, the 2 new ones from last week. But everyone I've spoken to, whether they're family members or the actual person that had the infection, back to work, doing well, no further symptoms. But no one has really had severe symptoms here. No one's been in the hospital. So it's all great news. Any questions?
Go ahead, Mike.
Of that household that had kind of the reoccurring instances, has any of them been tested for antibodies or anything like that yet?
You know, I spoke to several people today about antibody testing, and it's really not around from what we can determine. It's like, okay, where are they doing it? We really don't know where they're doing it. I was reading something, and I heard something as well, about the Framingham Study Group, which did all this cardiac work over the last, like, I don't know, as far back as I can remember, at least 20 years, probably more than that. And they've been approved by the state and FDA to work on this. I haven't heard anything more about the antivirus medications. So it's kind of out in limbo right now.
Anybody else? Kathy?
My question is, would it be possible to separate the list into the active or potentially active people and perhaps the number of people that have fully recovered and are no longer considered
Well,
quarantined?
this one household that has been on it for quite some time, one person tested negative twice, and she's ready to go back to work, but there's some issues, okay, with work.
Okay,
Okay, it's on the hospital. The other person, she hasn't been tested, so she's not comfortable going back to work.
okay,
And it's not a requirement of where she works, and she's in the healthcare part of things too, and she's just not comfortable going back until she has, you know, something a little more solid telling her she's okay. But she's been asymptomatic for quite some time.
oh, okay, so we don't really tend to, when we keep the number, what I was trying to get to is, we've been counting up, you know, we started at 1, then 2, you know, and now we're at 11, but all 11, and I know within that 11, there's households behind those numbers, right?
Right, right,
That aren't really counted, household members, correct? Does
Right.
Yes,
right.
but that number 11, all of those 11 cases that were counted aren't all still actively sick at
No.
this point.
No, they're back to work. A lot of them are back to work.
Do you have an approximate?
I would say, off the top of my head, probably, I would say at least 7, possibly 8 are back to work.
I wasn't expecting that high. That's amazing. That's really good.
So we really have 3 active cases, you think, and 8 that were positive, that are no longer considered active cases?
Right, right. So it's good.
That's very
You know,
good.
I mean, we're doing what we have to do in Groveland.
Bill?
Sure. From what I understand, listening to the governor and certain other health experts out there, I guess testing and tracking are going to be essential for us to really fully reopen. Has the governor or the state relayed to you how that testing and tracking is going to work, when it's going to start to be implemented, where the testing is going to be done, how it's going to be done? Do you have the resources in order to implement this rather, I guess, monumental task of testing and tracking? Can you speak to that at all?
A lot of questions there, Bill. You know, as far as the state goes, we're taking every positive case that's reported from the state to us, okay? And they have to be confirmed, okay, not a contact. Okay, a contact would be separate. So that answers that question. As far as the governor goes, you know, I think he's relying a lot on the medical field, you know, for answers, and, you know, I'd be comfortable with that myself. finding out what the immunologists have to say. And, you know, there's been a history in other parts of the world as to how things have gone on and what's happened. Has there been a rebound after a certain period of time? Yes. You know, what were these countries doing for protection? I'm not sure. I don't think any of us know exactly what they've done, if they've just worn masks or if they've actually, you know, been staying home and just doing what they have to do and not working in certain jobs. I don't know. You know, I haven't seen any documentation anywhere about what other countries have done. And I think a lot of the medical field is really relying on some of this information. And, you know, I think that, like Dr. Fauci, you know, I think he's concerned that we shouldn't open up things too soon, because then we're going to have people, you know, say we opened up the parks and we said, okay, you've got to stay, you know, separate. You can't be together. You can't get in groups. You can't be more than, you know, 6 feet. You know, are people going to do that? You know, it's like the beaches. You know, you walk along the beach and you see somebody you know, you start talking, and before you know it, you know, you're in a closer group. You know, I mean, opening up the beaches right now, I don't know. I grew up down by the beach, so, you know, I could live with a couple more months not at the beach right now, you know, just to make sure that we're a little safer than we would be if we opened up now.
Right.
Does that answer anything?
Somewhat, but now, as I watch these news conferences and press briefings and things, it seems like there's going to be a very coordinated effort, especially here in the Northeast, between states like Connecticut, New York,
Right,
Massachusetts.
right.
I guess Massachusetts
Rhode Island.
is the third, has the third most cases in the United States right now.
Correct.
Rhode Island is another one, very good. So, and given the tight geographic nature of New England as it is, there will be a lot of movement. So I know that they've talked about testing and tracking is going to be vital. I guess my question is, as a town, are we comfortable that we're going to be able to do this kind of testing and tracking and contact tracing and things like
Are
that?
you referring to antibody
I
testing?
don't know what I'm
or-
referring to. I don't know what they're
Okay,
chasing. All I
okay.
know is I know that they talk a lot about, in order to successfully reopen the country, and especially this northeast region here, there's going to have to be a significant amount of testing and tracking, contact tracing, to make sure that, like you said, we don't reinvigorate that spike again as a result of some unintended consequences of our actions. So is the state currently working with you to make sure that we're provided the essential equipment and testing and tracking and whatever else we need in this town to successfully complete that task, so that we know if we open up, we're in good shape?
One word, no. Okay, you know, and I think they're working on things, and they need places like the Mass General, the Brigham, UMass in Worcester, and, you know, Framingham to, you know, work on things and bring them to, you know, some sort of a spot where we can feel comfortable doing what we need to do going forward. You know, we've got to let the medical people decide on what to do. We really do.
So we've got to lean more on the State House and the governor to make sure that we have the needed supplies and equipment here in Groveland that we need to successfully complete that task. Right now, you don't feel comfortable that we have that at the
Oh, I know
present
we
moment.
don't. We don't
don't.
have testing, no.
Good. I think that's, and as far as I know, this virus is with us until one of three things happens. Correct me if I'm wrong. We either, one, have a cure, two, we have a vaccine, or 3, we achieve herd immunity. And from what I understand from herd immunity, we're years away from that. Would you say that we're gonna
you
live
know,
with this virus until one of those 3 things happen?
I'm kind of likening this whole thing to like polio was back in the 50s. You know, until they got a vaccine for it, I mean, there was a lot going on, a lot. Even in my small hometown, you know, there were people that had it, and, you know, they wound up in wheelchairs, crippled, all sorts of things. But once that vaccine, you know, came out, everybody got a vaccine and eradicated it.
So what you're saying is, this is not gonna go away like a seasonal flu. It's here to stay, and we need to continue to be cautious, take the safeguards that have flattened the curve here somewhat in Massachusetts, and
I
continue
don't
this
think
until...
anyone can really say, you know, what's going to happen in the future, because how long has this been going on that we know of? Maybe half a year, maybe 10 months?
Oh, yeah, and I'm not looking for you to be a
know what I
Nostradamus here, but in your professional opinion, would you say, this is here, it's here to stay until one of these 3 things happen, and we need to continue with our social distancing, disinfectants, cleaning, and things like that?
We have to
until the
be really
foreseeable future?
conscious of this, because this is bad. It's really bad.
I agree, we're almost up to 56,000 Americans as we speak, so that's nothing to sneeze at. It's a very unfortunate circumstance. I'm done, thank you.
Anybody else? Kathy?
Yeah, just a follow-up on what you were speaking to, Bill. I thought that tracing was being given to like Partners Health or some large organization that was going to become empowered.
You thought what?
That the tracing aspect of this, that was going to be given to a large health organization in the state to do. I didn't think that was going to
Have
be
you
put
heard
down
anything
to the
about that?
local level.
Yeah, it's not on the local level. The
Okay.
state put together I think they pulled public health students, and they set up a whole tracing. So the state put that together, that they're going to try and trace the patients and figure out where people were. They were talking about using cell phone technology and things like that, but that's all, the full tracing is being handled at the state level.
Right.
That would be way too much for, you know, one person or even 2 people to track.
That's what I was thinking, because I mean, I'm glad we're where we are with 7 recoveries and, you know, just a few households still quarantined, and hopefully they are feeling better very soon. But everything that we're doing in town is working, from what you've seen,
It appears to be,
which is good. So we just keep everything in place
exactly.
until we get more
Exactly.
information.
The thing that I have found rather frustrating is, you know, what people, particularly healthcare places, hospitals, nursing homes, what they're requiring of people who've been infected and they want to come back. You know, like a nursing home will say, you're asymptomatic, you can come back, you don't need to be tested. You know, some hospitals, you have to have 2 tests, 48 hours apart, both negative, before you can come back. Another case, you know, somebody tested positive. Another person in the household works at a hospital, and they were allowed to continue working at the hospital, which didn't make any sense to me, but that's what
So-
happened. You know, so
Yeah.
there's so many variables out there for things that it's,
Inconsistencies is what you're saying.
that's the word,
There are.
exactly.
Yeah, and I think with
Exactly.
regard to like assisted living, where my mother was in Connecticut, they weren't really reporting on that. They were reporting the nursing homes. They weren't reporting incidences within assisted living until people
Mm-hmm.
started to say, hey, I have family member in assisted, I'd like to know.
Belmont Nursing Home has 50 cases.
Heartbreaking.
I'm not, I don't know which one it is, but there's several there. And that Soldiers Home in Holyoke,
I know.
you know, 50 cases, and then they put everyone in a big room after that. So it just, some things just don't make sense,
Anybody else?
But that's the way they are.
I don't have any, almost set. Thank you
Okay.
thank you for your help
Okay,
and what you're
you're
doing.
welcome.
Thank
Appreciate you
Claire.
updating us.
Any concerns, policies, or protocols with regard to the coronavirus?
One.
Claire kind of covered about Denise has something, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to throw it out there for the board, some things to think about. We're still waiting for the governor, obviously, to decide what he's going to do past May 4th. And then when he makes the decision on that, we are still waiting for a second decision to come down regarding summer programs, summer school, summer camp. That is on his pipeline to have a decision. I've been in communication with Matt Castonguay regarding our current summer program and what to do. He's sort of staying the course right now, waiting to see what happens at the state level. But that is something that you all should start to think about, that if the state starts to relax the guidelines, are we comfortable bringing that number of students in to a small space as the Bagnell School? And what type of precautions would we want to take? Or start thinking proactively, and if you would like to do something now regarding the summer program, because people are paying and signing out quite regularly. So I don't need any decisions tonight, but it's something you all should think about, because we will have to decide on the summer program and what we're gonna do for this current year.
Doesn't that start in July?
Starts in the end of June. But by this point in the year, we've usually paid all of our down payments, paid all of our field trips, hired our staff. We haven't done any of that.
It's really that kind of area where you don't know the end of
Correct.
June.
Correct, and right
And they
now,
run the
daycares
field
and things are
trips.
closed through the end of June. Yeah, so if we resume, maybe there won't be field trips, but, then the kids are in the same enclosed space for 5 full days, and
Right.
I think it's something we should think about. Again, we'll wait for guidance from the state, but if they start to release the restrictions, this board can still keep restrictions or implement something else. And that's to say whether or not the school, I don't even know how the school would feel. It's granted it's our building, but I don't know how they would feel if we choose to have the summer program when they've been spending, all this time sterilizing their facility. It's just something to start thinking about.
Now, I know that the governor, in one of his most recent press conferences, when he decided to close schools for the rest of the remainder of the year, also stated there would be no in-person summer programs until June 29th, I believe was the date, right?
Correct.
So nothing's gonna happen until then, unless he rescinds that order, which I don't see.
Correct, so
likely.
nothing can happen childcare, camp-wise, until at least, I think, July 1st. But then again, he has told us in our weekly calls that they are focusing specifically on summer programs, recreational programs, and summer camps, because the time that people are signing up and things are being planned. So that's gonna be another whole regulation to come down. But like
Right.
I said, depending on what he decides, we may decide something further.
Also, because some of these field trips are out of state, that throws another real element into the whole field trip issue, because Mass may open in New Hampshire and Maine may not, to
Correct.
that extent that they're allowed field trips to Storyland or Wild Kingdom or whatever.
Right, and even if we do we want, the 200 students then interacting with 5,000 kids at Water Country or at Storyland? I mean, those are things we'll need to decide.
Mike, go ahead.
That is really a tough decision to start talking about now, because we could easily make the wrong decision now, right? Where we're looking at 2.5 months ahead, and now we're saying, oh, shut everything down, then all of a sudden maybe things loosen up, and now we don't look like we know what we're doing again, or, we don't do anything, and now all of a sudden the people put all this money into this program, and now what do we do with it? As far as the school goes, can't we cordon off just certain areas of the school no matter what, and just say, you can only use these facilities, these
Well-
rooms?
We do.
Right, but I mean even more so, like saying, you're not going anywhere in the school other than the old gym, these rooms, and maybe the cafeteria, and then that's it.
Yeah, and I do normally work with Jim Day on that, and he assigns so many classrooms and cafeteria and the old gym, because if it's raining, they need to do something with the kids anyways. So they do a good job at that. I don't know how they're gonna feel about having, all the students in there and then having to clean and sterilize again before school starts. Again, it's just things, no decisions now, but it's just something that we will have to decide sooner or later, what we're gonna do with the summer program.
It's a tough position.
Kathy, go ahead.
Thanks. I just think that while we're thinking about it, we should consider some type of notification to the people that are signing up, that this isn't all decided yet, that we're going to continue to take enrollment, but like you said, Bill, they may not be, field trips may not be part of the program, and that everything's not decided yet. So that, just so they understand, because I'm sure there are parents that work through the summer, and they're trying to figure out, transitioning from what we're doing now, which is similar to the summer because school's closed, but they're probably trying to transition month by month. And the more information we can give them and be more helpful to them, maybe at our next meeting we can make a list of the different factors that we'll have to think about and get a letter.
I think one thing folks ought to know about right away is they should start implementing or strategizing a Plan B very quickly, because this may be a reality this summer, and there's nothing we can do about it. So if you're proactive or the proactive type, I think working on a Plan B starting today would be very prudent of the people that really depend on that program for their summer childcare. And to Mike's point, there's no guessing with this. This virus is such a perplexing disease where it strikes indiscriminately, some people and not others. Guidance we're given today could change tomorrow. Guidance we're given tomorrow can change the day after. So I guess the best advice we can give right now is have a Plan B and maybe even a Plan C in store, just in case.
It sounds like the governor has got a handle on it, and he knows he's going to have to make a decision at some point, pretty quickly. And he knows that time is wasting. Kathy, go ahead.
Well, I just was thinking, we have another summer smaller program at the VZ Park, so we should include them in the loop when we decide to. I just think we should have some kind of small notification just to let them know that it might change. We just don't know.
Oh,
We-
it's
we
guaranteed
don't
it's gonna
run the-
change.
Yeah.
We don't run the VZ Park summer program, though. That's a private company that does, they just rent the facility. We run the Groveland summer program.
Right, but whether or not we allow gatherings of that many people is going to impact both of those. Right?
Correct.
Yeah, so.
But I don't know, I don't know anything about that program or who signs up or who runs it, or, that's a completely separate organization, is what I was saying.
Right, so shouldn't we find out? Like, if we're going to say, put out on a directive to Jim Day and just say, this is where we are, probably will be changes, we don't know what they are, and we'll keep you posted, shouldn't we give that same information?
Well, it's not, has nothing to do with Jim Day. It's
I
Matt
mean,
Castaway
Matt,
as our
sorry.
director. He would just send an automated email, I would think, to the people that have already signed up, or post it on their group Facebook page and just say,
Okay.
here's what we know today, but, separate organizations that rent our space, I don't know that we need to get into that detail, because we don't control that program. If the governor says summer programs can continue tomorrow, this board then still has to look at whether or not we want to run our own summer program with the same conditions. We don't have any control over the other programs. If we open up our facility, then they're free to rent our facility.
Okay, so we.
You know what I mean? That's why
we-
the difference is a little, we run the actual summer program.
Oh, I realize there's a difference. What I'm saying is that if we make, a ruling for one, that we're not going to allow the gatherings of this many people, or we limit the number of campers in a room, wouldn't we do the same at the other camp? If it's in our town?
That would be up to the board.
Oh, okay, I'm just saying these are things to consider.
Yeah, Bill, go ahead.
One other thing that Matt and Jim may want to consider is if the summer program is allowed to function this summer as typical, they might need twice as much space as required just to maintain the social distancing requirements that may still be needed at the time.
Or masks.
Or masks, but I'm thinking as opposed to just 2 classrooms, a cafeteria and the gym, they
Yeah.
might need 6 classrooms, the cafeteria and the gym, in order to, maintain that number of participants in a single
That's a good point.
area. So they might want to start thinking that way too. Get both ends of the
Right, but I think if we move forward and we need to keep some type of social distancing, I don't know what kind of summer program we're gonna have, because how do they schedule programs and games and events if we can't keep kids close to each other? So I think if social distancing continues, then we need to strongly consider suspending the summer program for this year. I just don't know how do you keep 6-year-olds away from each other? That's why they didn't bring school back in session. I don't know that we can safely do that on our end. So I think that's something that we would need to consider depending on what the regulations are once and if they're relaxed in the near future.
Good point. We might have an age restriction. Just, you know, the older
Well-
kids get a little better.
Whether you're 6 years old or 16, it's, I mean, the whole thing's puzzling no matter what age you are, right?
That's true.
I wouldn't necessarily, a 6-year-old's gonna behave better than a 16-year-old or a 14.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, anything else on that?
Nope.
Email from the highway superintendent regarding his staff.
Yep, I see Rennie's on the line. He has a proposal that he was discussing today. Rennie, I've unmuted you, if you'd like to go ahead. Did he just disappear? Hang on a second, Rennie, we're not hearing you.
That's summer program.
Try this one. All right, can you try that again?
That's a no-win.
I don't see how it's
Yes. Although I can't hear you there.
Can you get a little volume on that?
I'm trying,
This thing's making.
I'm gonna
a noise.
try, hang on a minute, Rennie, you're not coming through the way you should.
Okay, my volume's all the way up, so.
No,
just
no,
coming
it's
through the
here, let me try
computer.
this again. Okay, wanna try it one more time?
Bueller.
No, he's not coming through the. Okay, go ahead, we'll deal with you on this end.
So this is, the concerns of the highway department employees about, the water and sewer department is on an all basis right now. I think Colin, had a meeting with you guys a couple weeks ago. And obviously the, highway department employees, learned of their on-call situation. And I think that, what I'm proposing is not quite in line with what they're doing, but maybe we can assimilate a, two-person rotation for the right now, where we'll have 2 on, and 2 off, and they will rotate days. I think Mansley's talked about it, is obviously the other 2 personnel, are, if they're needed, will be, you know, they won't get any overtime or anything from this. It'll just be, if they're needed, they'll be called in for emergency situations, whatever. If we have trees or there are circumstances they're needed, they'll just be called in. But I think that 2 on and 2 off will keep
That's the
the
feedback.
group a little more distanced on their work days.
Could, Denise, could you call him on the phone and get him on a speakerphone?
Rennie, say something one more time. I don't know that the speakerphone will come through any clearer, to be honest with you.
There's nothing I can.
Yeah, no, it's the speakers on our end today are not working, and I'm not really sure why.
They worked fine last
Gremlins.
time.
Were you able to hear what he was asking?
I got bits and pieces of it over here, so.
He was asking for a 2-man rotation. So there it goes.
There you go.
Okay, 2 men on and 2 men off.
You just got
Um,
it, Tracy.
Yeah, I just gotta lower it because now it's super high. So 2 men on and 2 men off, that, the 2 that are off, if there is an emergency or there is an urgent situation, he would bring the other 2 back on at no overtime, just at their same pay, because we would be paying them to sort of be at home and be on call.
Have Rennie try to see if he comes through.
Oh, I think that's him making noise right now.
Oh,
He's
that's
the
him?
only one unmuted, so that's him that you can hear. So do you guys have questions or comments for him?
Questions for the highway superintendent? Bill?
And just, if you can speak loud enough for the speaker to pick you up too.
So they're gonna work on a rotating basis through the 5 days?
So we're down to 4, because we have
Down to
closed the
4.
buildings on Fridays.
Okay, so 2 on, 2 off. No, I don't have any questions right now.
All right. Kathy?
Would it be the same two paired together each and every week?
Yes, most likely we'll pair, two, the two people that are on Mondays won't be on Tuesdays, and yes, they'll be paired, consecutively so that they're working together constantly and we don't switch those two at least.
Okay, because if we switch anybody, then it defeats the whole point.
Correct,
Right, so they understand that.
correct, yes, they do.
Okay.
Well, it seems like it's a system of fairness. We did it for the water department, and the same thing should apply to the highway. I did see them working on Route 97 last week, and it's pretty tough when I think they were doing a storm drain. Pretty tough for them to be within 6 feet of, further than 6 feet away when they're working hand in hand. We certainly don't want them to come down and have them all out of commission, so sounds reasonable.
That's what we're trying to avoid.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I got,
Mike, go ahead.
so as it is now, there's not more than 2 of you together at any one location when you're out doing whatever work you're doing?
Well, much like Ed just addressed, there was 3 of them on the drainage repair. That type of work it needs to, most likely on a repair like that, you need to have more than 2 of the employees together.
Yeah.
And they're within close confines when they're working on stuff like that. Those things we're trying to avoid, but that particular catch basin became quite dangerous after this winter, so it needed to be addressed.
And does that mean that you will be working totally remotely, or you'll be part of this rotation?
No, I'll be I'm usually in every morning until in town hall as limitedly as possible, but I'm usually around most of the day. I won't be working any less or any more than I was before this all came down. My hours won't change. So I'll still be on for, supervisory type of situation.
We should, Kathy, you had something?
Yeah, just as a point of discussion, there's really nothing fair in this virus that we're dealing with. They understand that, I hope, that we're making decisions week by week. We're trying to get it right, and we won't know until after it's over with whether we did the right thing or the wrong thing. We need to keep the public services going. We were concerned with the testing of the water, that if for some chance all 3 water employees came in contact and got quarantined, we'd have that function not functioning. Highway has a different function. It's still important, but we can still move forward with 1 or 2 people. So it's just really important, if we decide that we're going to do this, that there's no crossover on these shifts, or it's all for nothing. It's not a matter of trying to equal out the hours. I think that, I want to make clear that when we first started to shorten hours so that people would stay away and be more healthy and try and limit and mitigate any of our employees getting ill, that was, our big thing was, we did try to be somewhat fair. I think Denise helped with looking at the work week and all, but right now, we're just trying to make sure that departments don't all get quarantined at the same time. I feel like that's a slightly different goal. So it's pretty vital that if we have two on, it really can't change, those two. Or else we've.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely, I agree 100%.
okay.
Well, unless there's an urgent situation and we need the other two to come in. And then they're gonna have to, then they're gonna have to take precautions with masks and trying to stay away and,
Yeah, and I did supply them with masks. They have, I mean, we have the mechanic gloves that they all have in their trucks, so they have the PPE at their disposal. I can't, I can't force them to wear it. The people that, take the precaution and wear it and wear it, properly,
Can't force, I think you
that
can force
obviously helps everything.
You can't force them to wear it?
you can implement a policy.
I think they don't get paid if they don't wear it. That's easy enough to enforce it, right?
Sure would be.
I mean, I think you could certainly say if more than two are needed for one job, they are required to wear masks or something, take precautions to stay away from each
Yeah,
other.
it only makes sense to do that.
Yep.
Well, that should be a policy that the highway superintendent, if he deems it necessary to do that, you gotta
Well,
leave
I
something up
think
to
the board
department
has
head.
made all the policies, and I think if the board is concerned about staff exposure, then I think that's a step you all should take. We've made all the policies across the board as far as COVID-19 is concerned. But if you
Yeah,
want to
I've
delegate
certainly
that, then,
I have certainly urged them to wear it. Like I said, I got some masks from the fire chief, and, I let them know that they were available for their own use whenever they needed them. So they have been deployed.
Okay, we probably should put this in the form of a motion to accept this. Someone want to make a motion? All right, I'll make a motion. We allow the highway department to do a two men on, 2 men off schedule. If needed, the two that are off will come in. No further compensation for that. I think that, Randy, does that sound like it covers it?
Yep, pretty much.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it, but I want to add comment to it. So second,
Go ahead.
I would put in there that if more than two have to work on a job, that they're required to use masks for their own protection, really. I mean,
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Go ahead.
I'd like to see that as a separate policy, town-wide, so that each department isn't left to their own devices. But these policies come from this board down, that whether it be police, fire, highway, water, sewer, anytime there's a group of more than two, they are required to wear PPE. And if not, pack up your stuff, go home, call up the next guy. We cannot take the chance, because we're so thin as it is in this town, in every department, that we can't take the chance that inadvertently one person spreads it to another person on that staff, and then that whole department goes down. We're not fat anywhere in any department, let's face it. And I think leaving it to their own departments, their own devices, is just a mistake. It's gonna create a lot of inconsistencies amongst departments. But if we have a policy that says all of it, all departments from this board, it becomes the law of the land. There's no leaving it up to the devices of whoever runs the department or whatever, so I agree with you, I'd just like to take it to the next step.
That
and
should be
make
a,
it
that should be a
much more
separate, that should be a
Separate
separate,
motion
uh,
or discussion.
a separate vote. We're
Yeah.
just voting on the highway. Read that motion again.
Motion to allow the highway to work with 2 guys on, 2 guys off rotation. If needed, the other 2 will come in with no further compensation.
Mike
been motioned
seconded
and
that. Any
seconded.
further discussion?
I wanted to add that amendment.
Well, we need to either add the amendment or guarantee that we're doing the next motion. Are we doing the next motion right after this?
Yeah, we certainly could do that.
And if you don't, you can always reconsider. So if the second motion doesn't pass, you can reconsider this if you'd like.
Okay,
I'm for that.
All right, so I
So you're
withdraw
just gonna
my,
vote on the straight motion.
Yep.
No further discussion, all in favor? Unanimous. Mike, you're up.
me?
You're up.
Oh.
You had another
Are you
motion?
making a motion?
Oh, whatever, Bill, why don't you make it?
All right, I'll make them, I make the motion that, all departments, townwide, wherever there are more than 2 department employees gathered together, PPE is a requirement. It is no longer optional. Yes,
Can we just clarify that you mean masks and not full gowns, and, because PPE can be interpreted multiple ways.
I'd say masks and gloves at a minimum.
Well, gloves, I think they've determined are not as effective as people once thought. So,
I'd say at least masks.
At least
Masks.
masks. Strip them down to nothing and killing my motion here.
well,
Your mojo?
I'm just saying. We don't
just
have
wanna
the
make sure
gowns
that,
and,
you
we
know,
don't
we-
have the full PPE to provide.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we don't accidentally spread it, you know, amongst our employees by accident, where we're so thin as it is.
And
It
where we've
doesn't
been doing
take-
such a good job so far.
Yeah, I mean, 1 or 2 people go down in certain key departments, we don't have a department anymore in the town.
Okay, that's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Kathy?
what?
Yeah,
I was
further-
waiting for you to call the
nothing?
vote.
No, we had a motion and a second. I think it ought to be left up to the department heads. There are certainly situations where they're probably not feasible to be wearing masks. If there's more than 2, let the department heads make the decisions. And you got some, these aren't 6 to 16-year-old kids. Let them let these people make their own decisions. They know the consequences. And before you put in a motion like that, I think that the department head should weigh in. The fire chief, the police chief, should be able to weigh in on something like that, rather than, let them see whether they see situations where it wouldn't work. Mike, go ahead.
I think they should be doing it anyways. I think with their knowledge and their understanding that they should be doing it anyways without us having to say to do it.
Bill?
And it's analogous to the governor giving a statewide order, but allowing the municipalities and the towns and cities to do whatever they want. There's no consistent policy which allows for each department to operate independently of any said policy. And in that right, I'm just going to use the example because I don't think this is a problem, but the police department doesn't want to adhere to the policy, and the fire department does. Well, when 911 gets called, they all rush to that scene. Now you have a group that is adhering to the policy and a group that isn't. How do these 2 groups now, operating under different policies, coexist on the same site at the same time? Whereas if there's one consistent policy issued from the town on down, then there's no discrepancy. The police show up, the fire show up, the EMS shows up, whoever shows up, there's more than 2 of us here, grab a mask. That's the policy. It's not left to and I don't doubt that the individual department heads wouldn't already have issued guidelines similar to that, but now it becomes just a stated policy from this board on down that there is no latitude in the policy. There's no openness. There's no, we can do it, you can't, you can do it, we can't. It has to be across the board, or it doesn't work, in my opinion.
Agreed. Kathy?
I agree. I think that every step we've taken so far has been to stop the spread of the virus
And protect.
and protect. And this is not about micromanaging. It's not about being fair or unfair. And I come back to the same point that until this is over and we look back, we will not be able to judge our actions. But at least if we're making them with good, honest intent, trying to do the right things, then we should make these changes. So I'm in favor.
Well, I just think that in certain situations, it may not be feasible, maybe with the fire department, maybe with the police department. It just may not be feasible to put on a mask. You got somebody out at a fire dressing a hydrant, a third person comes over, you got a building on fire. Oh, wait a minute, I gotta run back to the truck and get my mask, because now that instead of 2 of us at the hydrant, there's 3 of us giving a hand. It seems like situations that may not make sense to be where they're not needed. And I'm gonna oppose it. Any further discussion? None. Motion on the floor, and with a second, no further discussion, all in favor? 3, 1 opposed, 1 passes 3-1.
Can we discuss the second, which I apologize, I didn't put it as a separate item, but I put it under the policy section. I believe you were all contacted by a gentleman who would like the yard waste site reopened.
Yes.
So I will, Rennie, I'm gonna unmute you again. Rennie and I spoke about this, and he can certainly talk about it. We just don't feel it's appropriate at this time to open the highway yard. The two gentlemen who run the yard, as you know, are both in the vulnerable population and could be susceptible to the virus. I personally don't know another town that has opened their yard waste site. A couple of them opened them just after the last storm, just for tree debris only, but no yard waste or brush. So I wanted to make sure we at least responded to the request that came before you all.
I know we got the email, but I didn't see it on the agenda.
I just listed it, it was considered under the policies and protocols, because we had discussed it before, it's just
Oh,
under the
okay.
policies. So I did not list it separate, but it's in your packet.
Uh,
So Rennie, do you have thoughts on that you'd like to share?
Yes, I am also in agreement with this. I know people are probably itching to get, yard work and yard waste dumped off, and I can also feel for them, because I have the same issue going on in my house. I just don't feel as though it's an essential necessity right now, and I agree with Denise in that the 2 gentlemen that got our operations are in that higher risk population for catching COVID-19. So I'm in total agreement. And these gentlemen, we've talked about, tell them to just stay in their car. They're just those types of guys, and only because they're good-hearted gentlemen. They don't really know how to stand still. That's why they, at the point where they are still working, because they need something to do. And that's my fear, is that they get in there to help someone and they're too close, and God forbid, they do come down with it. I don't think they'd fare very well for this, the way that their population's working with this disease. So I think it's something we certainly, I think me and Denise had talked, once the governor kind of eases the restrictions, then we can revisit it at that point. Denise, does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay.
And that should be, Rennie, we're probably looking at another 10 days, maybe, 2 weeks at the most.
Yeah, I think is it still May 4th? Is that?
It
Wow.
is, so
It's not gonna.
the governor plans to release by the end of the week his next phase approach on how long we're going to stay closed or what his next plan is.
Okay, so yeah, maybe the next meeting we have, we can, you know what I mean, I'll certainly come in and speak on it, whatever it is, and we can address it at that point.
Anybody? Mike, go ahead.
I'm kind of on the fence with this one, because I understand that people are home and they have the time to clean up their yard and do the yard work that they normally wouldn't have time to do, but they don't have a place to take it. I understand the concerns with the older people that run the yard waste, and their susceptibility to this virus. But I think maybe coming to some kind of agreement where you open it on a limited basis for a limited number of hours on maybe a limited day. And I'm not gonna ask someone to do some kind of work that I wouldn't volunteer to do myself, so I'll volunteer to sit down there and monitor it if we decide to open it, the board decides to open it, that I'll sit down there and monitor it so people can come in, don't hang out, drop off your stuff and leave. There's no, collaboration or groupings or anything, but I don't know. I think that trying to get some sense of normalcy in life, and this would be a small kind of sense around that. Denise doesn't agree. Some kind of small sense around that would be good for the people, but that's just my 2 cents.
Denise, you got a rebuttal?
Just my concern is if we're the only community that's open, someone is gonna have to check every license to see if who's a Groveland resident, because we would
And I
be
would-
the only
yeah.
ones around that open.
And I would, again, if I'm gonna volunteer to be down there, I would volunteer to do that, because I'm not in that susceptible age group per se. I think I'm somewhat healthy, other than,
Yeah.
some people might question my mentality. But if we did decide that the board decided that they would open it on a limited basis or a day basis or once a week or whatever they decide, I would volunteer to take on some of those hours, because it's just day, right? It's not a Monday or a Wednesday, it's just day for people, so.
Bill?
Yeah, I know, I've thought a lot about this too, and my concern was always the 2 volunteers there that are up in that high-risk group. But then, based on this, what we did here today, it seems like we might have a small surplus of manpower, because we're gonna be working 2 on, 2 off, and possibly one of those off days could be the on day. But my concern now is not so much the folks that are going to be the keepers of the gate, because I think with the 2 on and 2 off, we could work around the volunteers. My concern is a rush of people showing up, which just puts them at risk. And I don't know how we would stop that. When I first got this, I started going through my mind, and hey, we could work out the logistics, but how do we stop the influx of people from other towns even, from not having this large parade down Central Street, waiting to get in one at a time into the gates? So I just don't know how it would work logistically, although I'd like to see it open somewhat, somehow, because we do have a lot of yard waste. It was kind of a mild winter, and there's a lot of stuff, but I just don't know how it would work and to eliminate all possibility of risk. Even a minute % of risk is too much for me right now. We've done such a good job dealing with this. I'd hate to see any part of it regress because of actions we took where we didn't really anticipate the unintended consequences of those actions.
Kathy?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I read the email too, and I thought, really like to help folks out. And I know people have got a lot of stuff from the trees because we've had some bad weather. Maybe we can't make the whole decision at this meeting tonight, but maybe a week from now, we might have been able to think it through a little more. I was thinking more of like a reservation system, which is going to limit it, but you'd have to provide your license, your address, and you'd be given a time that you'd have to be there at.
That.
Yeah, no more pit pile at the gate. And,
Well, who's gonna manage that,
Right.
though?
Well, I guess.
He doesn't have time to do that.
I know, but I mean, I don't know how else you're gonna manage, that kind of onslaught. That's the problem, is that you're going to get a pile up unless you have people have to reserve. We're not gonna be able to open this without a pile
And
at
I don't
this
think you
time.
can do that without
That's the big
huge
problem.
administrative
Yeah.
task that we just don't have.
Unless they use the,
manpower right now.
the burn permit system.
Yep, why not?
I don't know if you can, I just thought about it, maybe that system where people register to burn
Right,
through the fire department, maybe they do that same type of, I don't know, it gets really complicated to start adding these things to it, but.
Well, some people it takes longer for them to unload their trees and brush, leaves than others, so, I mean, as far as the reservation system, that wouldn't work. But if you, one thing, listening to the governor of New Hampshire, and he was asked a question about opening up the beaches, and his comment seemed to make sense, that he couldn't open up the beaches in New Hampshire until Massachusetts and Maine did that, because, like Bill had just mentioned, you're gonna get an influx of people from elsewhere. And if Groveland opens it up, the nearby communities are not, we're gonna end up with all of their leaves and grass clippings. You know, that part of it makes sense, maybe to hold off another week to see how the governor's gonna do. I just don't see any kind of a reservation system as working. That's taken into the premise that somebody's gonna get in and get out of there in 10 minutes. Sometimes that's not the case.
If I can interject my own, I think I can also reach out to other towns nearby and see if they have a strategy. I've also, even when we do open it, I've talked about painting some lines where we normally would dump off, to give restrictions to how many vehicles we also have in the yard at the time. I know that might become a little more work for whoever's regulating it at the time. But that's also some things that I have thought of, in the interim is, painting some lines to kind of, so people aren't parking right up on top of each other, maybe a 5 or a 6 car limit at a time dumping, and then the other cars wait until, one leaves, one can come in type of situation.
You'd almost
Similar to
need-
what they're doing at the shopping market.
yep.
You almost need one person at the gate and one person at the pile.
I'll do the gate.
Correct.
Yeah,
Well,
so I
Yeah.
can't, so even if I volunteer, I can't do both places at
No,
once.
you could be at the
Well-
pile, I'll do the gate.
Okay.
Okay.
I won't fight over that. You guys can hash that one out.
Okay,
So we'll maybe visit this again in a week?
that sounds, the next meeting, visit at the next meeting?
I think it's prudent at this point just to kick the can down the road at least another week to see what happens.
Okay,
I hate
sense.
to do it, but, I mean,
that makes sense.
people just have to understand and appreciate the situation we're all in.
Okay, we'll kick the can down the street. Rennie, can you hold on, because we got you up again for discussion on a street sweeper?
Yep,
Are you still there?
I'm here.
Yeah,
Yeah, he knows he's on there again.
yeah, give us a few minutes till we get to you.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, next, complaint regarding a member of the Conservation Commission. I'm sure everybody got that,
Yeah, I think that was just a notification. We can't really discuss anything around that.
no, I mean, a notification, obviously, this would have to be discussed in an executive session if you want to go that route. Any comments? We'd have to, couldn't discuss that here. It would have to be an executive session. Do you want to schedule an executive session to deal with the complaint? Go ahead, Bill.
Is it possible to schedule an executive session and whereby we could view the
meeting?
the meeting collectively as opposed to individually during that executive session, so that we could all in real time, at the same time, view what the alleged complaint is?
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly set up another computer. If we did it on Zoom, you'd have to invite the person making the complaint, and you'd have to invite the person the complaint is about. we could certainly share it, I can share the screen and you could all watch the same clip at the same time.
Okay.
So I
That
guess the
makes sense.
decision would be
Yes.
if you want to proceed with an executive session under the current orders and have sort of a Zoom executive session. We'd have to have people attest that they're the only one in the room and no one else is privy to the conversation. Or is it something you want to fact find and discuss when the restrictions are lifted?
How could you set up the computer, the Zoom, to just the person that made the complaint and the person listed here?
So you can set a password and only give the people that you invite to participate, and like I said, they would have to attest at the beginning of the meeting that they are the only ones in the room that are listening to that conversation. As long as you have it recorded, then you proceed under the understanding that,
It's only two extra
That's-
people, right? The
Correct.
complaint, and can we just put one there and have the meeting here?
I don't know that you wanna get into that, where we're not allowing public into the building or into the meetings.
Correct.
That attestment that I'm the only one here.
Well, most towns are doing their
I
full
know.
selectmen's meetings and all their executive sessions through Zoom. No one's having in-person meetings. We're one of the only ones having an in-person meeting. So again, that's something you can decide if, how you'd like to proceed with the actual complaint.
I'd like to, in my opinion, bring it forward to an executive session.
We'd be going in under the complaint against an official, is that?
Yes, it would be under the, a complaint against a public official.
Okay, so.
And then, obviously, the public official has the right to have it in an open session. So they would have the right to have a full open meeting, and then we would have to set up a second Zoom meeting and remove all the restrictions and allow anyone to participate.
Okay,
Or anyone to hear the meeting, I should say.
correct. Okay, and, is there fact-finding or any checking that we need to do before this? I forwarded to Denise everything that anybody has sent me about this. So
Right, so-
everything I have is now,
And I do think there's some confusion, because I know you guys got different complaints than I got. So
Correct.
I have not communicated with this person. It was sent to me through Rebecca, as the town planner. So when I got this, I scheduled it for the board. I think you are all getting different information.
I know.
So I'm not sure what the actual complaint is, but the one I have received is the one that's in your packet.
So shall we focus on just that at this time? Would that make it more clear? Just if we were gonna schedule it for next week or something?
Yeah, we could, somebody make a motion that, one way or other, either to bring this up in an executive session or not do anything. I think where a
Or-
complaint has
or-
been made, we need to act in some way.
Well,
Kathy, go ahead.
well, the other option that Denise would mention was we could try to wait and see if the restrictions get lifted so that we could have that meeting, but we don't know when that might be. So that would be pushing it off for a while, at least 2 weeks.
Oh,
Probably more. No, I know.
Optimistic.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, at the very least 2 weeks.
Yeah, I don't want to see this drag on until June, July,
Okay,
who knows?
yeah. So put it on for our next agenda at the end,
An executive session,
yeah.
Could be, sure.
fine by me.
So do you want your next which I guess we have to discuss if you still want a meeting next Monday
Yep.
to continue with the every Monday meeting, or you want this on your next regularly scheduled meeting, which would be May 11th?
Well, it's just day, so Monday is fine with me.
Monday's fine with me.
I mean, every other Monday, we're just strictly meeting in a joint session with the Board of Health, which is typically a very short session. I don't see why we couldn't do the executive session right after that.
Right. So that'd be this coming Monday.
Yeah,
That's fine, I just need to know what time that you plan to have the executive session so I can notify the two parties.
5:30?
5:30? Yeah, sounds good
That should
to
give us
me.
plenty of time to have the health meeting and anything else that
Yeah,
comes up.
and if we run over, we could always suspend the selectmen meeting and then go to the executive session.
Yes, because we may have a lot to talk about next Monday, because between now and then, we'll have the new guidelines for the state. So it's either extending the order, or he's going to change something that we'll have to discuss how to proceed with. So 5:30 on May 4th.
Okay.
Okay. Put that off till May 4th. Next. Right of refusal for the estate of Vinnie Petroska, 7 Star Road. I got an email from one of the attorneys that the town needs to sign off on a right of refusal. We've done a couple of these. And the vice attorney is requesting a waiver of first refusal from, on this particular property. I don't think the town has any use for the property. Property address 123 in the rear of 7 Star Road. Comments? Comments?
Yeah.
Mike, go ahead.
I don't think we've ever been in a position where we wanted to buy any of these properties, first right of refusal, as long as I've been on the board, so.
Yeah, I agree. We've had a few of them come across.
No, and they have an active PNS for $212,500, so if we wanted to take them up on the offer, it would have to be a comparable offer for the property.
Okay, so we probably should have a motion to allow them, or probably, how do we want to word that? Maybe give up our right of
First refusal.
first refusal.
Or you don't want to exercise your
Motion,
right.
yeah, not to exercise our option of right of first refusal on the property listed at 7 Star Road.
Second,
Do we have a second?
second.
Kathy seconds it. Any further discussion? None? All in favor? Unanimous. Okay. Comments or conditions regarding Sewell Street filling project?
And I will say, we have a bunch of people that may want to participate in this, so
Okay.
when the time comes, when the board is ready to turn it over, let me know, and I will unmute, and in an orderly fashion, call on folks to speak.
Okay.
Kathy? Any?
Yes, I reached out to Mr. Fitzgerald from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, initially just because I was not on the board when the order of conditions was signed by this board, and I wanted to be informed on it. He sent me a link, and I was looking through the documents, and out of curiosity, I started to look at the documents as to how the supervision of the fill that arrives is dealt with. And I've copied for you 3 circumstances where fill was found to be contaminated and had to be removed from the site. These are just 3, I think there could be more. So I reached back out to Mr. Fitzgerald to say, you know, this is being managed through the state, what options or prerogatives does the Board of Selectmen have on this supervision? I asked him, you know, is it feasible to have supervision every time a load of fill arrives? And he seemed to indicate no, but that they would be open if we had concerns. I don't know if you had a chance to read through this. I found it by mistake at first. I was just kind of curious as to how this worked, because I was on the board, I don't know, 25 years ago when we tried to fill that quarry, and again, we had problems with the fill, and the project had to stop. In one case, it sounds like there was cans of oil in the dirt that was in the back of the truck. So that fill was not accepted. Another case, they had arsenic above the acceptable level, and I forget what the other case found, but these are just examples. If you follow the link, you can look at any of the documentation, and I suppose this is proof that they're actually checking things, which is good. I guess my concern is that, like, in one case, they said they would no longer take fill from that site, but in another case, that determination wasn't made, at least not in the document I read. And again, I read very quickly. I was not trying to audit this process, but I was trying to become informed. And as I saw that there had been some problems, I became more concerned. So Rebecca is saying this new thing before us is to fill in another site. I guess I'm concerned about the site that's being filled in as well, just to make sure that we are properly informed when there's problems there.
So we
Anybody
do have Rebecca and Bill Daly are both on the call, in addition to Mike Dempsey, so if there's anyone else in the chat, so I know that you would be waiting to speak.
We want to hear from the town planner first. Let's go with the town planner.
All right, Rebecca, you're on.
Okay.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board. I had received notification from Denise about this matter coming before the board. So I went back to my files in terms of what we have received for this particular parcel and kind of put together a timeline that was sent to you in regards to phase 1 and phase 2. So from my understanding, phase 1 had been approved by the Board of Selectmen, or not necessarily approved, but comments and conditions had been established back in 2018. And now the owner is looking to do an amendment, or phase 2, if you will, with the additional land that he was able to acquire. And therefore now Mass DEP is coming back for the board to look to see if you have any other comments and or conditions. So that's all I have in that regard, is to just give you as much information as you possibly need that I have available to myself.
Any questions for Rebecca?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Rebecca, are you informed when any of these loads have been removed from the site? Are you given any kind of a report? The fill?
No, the planning department or the zoning department is not given any notification in terms of the movement of fill and or when a violation is found. Usually that information is sent directly to the Department of, the Board of Health.
To our Board of Health here, or Environmental Protection of the state?
It would go through the third-party monitoring, which would then go through Mass DEP. If there's an issue that is found, potentially there could be enforcement, and then a notice is then sent to the owner and then also sent to our Board of Health.
You all set?
Well, I'm assuming since the loads were returned, then our Board of Health did not get any notification. So we're not notified unless there's some type of enforcement. I'm not quite sure what you're telling me.
That's what it appears to be, is that if there is an enforcement issue or if there is something where the fill is accepted, then our Board of Health is notified. If fill is rejected, that is part of the soil reclamation process and management plan. So that would be the state saying that the soil is not allowed and they kick it back. So we wouldn't receive notification. It would go through the third-party monitor, through Mass DEP, through the SMP that was issued to the owner.
Rebecca, is each load that goes into the site inspected?
No.
I would have to defer to the owner of the property. I'm not too sure if it's every load, but I believe it's not every, but selected.
Can she repeat what she said about the notification process again? What you said before Ed asked you that question, can you repeat that again? if you remember. It was a
Yeah.
lot. It was a lot of
Sorry.
SMP and DEP and state this and state that and Board of Health and,
Sorry about that. So from my understanding is that if there is an issue with the fill and it is accepted at some point in time, then a violation could be issued and enforcement would be taken by DEP. And if that is the case, then DEP would send notification to the owner of the property, who would then be fined, and notification would also be sent to the Board of Health. But that does not mean that the Board of Health is notified every single time a load is monitored, only when a violation is found.
okay, thank you.
Rebecca, with all this paperwork, I don't see a map indicating where this additional site for 200,000 cubic yards is going to be. Can we get a, can we get a map so that we can see where that is?
Yes, that is actually part of the Zoning Board of Appeals package that was submitted for the 40B project for that particular site. So there is a grading plan associated with that plan, and it does show that other part.
Thank you. Anybody else? With no objection, we'll hear from Bill Daly. Is there somebody else that wanted to speak also?
The Conservation Commission, I believe, wants to speak, but you can certainly listen to Bill first.
Let's hear from the developer first.
Okay, Bill, you're on.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good evening, board. So, back in January, I think all the boards were sent a package for the notice of project change, because always, from the very beginning, we were trying to acquire the sand pit next door. It was under separate ownership to make this, the whole thing, go back the way it was. And we were finally able to do that, and like Rebecca said, it was always, it's on the zoning, the ZBA plans on the town website and all that. But back in November, we filed a notice of project change with MEPA. We had to go through Natural Heritage first, have our agreement with them, file with MEPA. All the boards and commissions should have received a package for the comment period up to, I think, February 11th. And my MEPA certificate for the new parcel was approved February 21st. But what this does is it takes away a big slope between the sand pit and the quarry. So really half of the fill, the extra fill, is making up that slope, because now the slope will be from a 45 to a straight 90. So it's going to take up that triangle instead of the 3-to-1 all the way back in. Not every load is inspected. It's inspected to see if it's too wet, the amount of trash, asphalt, any type of debris, a smell, anything like that is put back on the truck and taken out. Testing there's a test for about every 18 loads of material coming in. It's tested before it leaves the site. It's tested by an independent lab with that site's environmental monitor, or LSP, licensed soil professional. It's submitted in a 300-page application with all the test results to my LSP, the site's LSP here, for approval or denial, because sometimes there's limits, like Kathy mentioned arsenic. That's pretty common, because arsenic's naturally occurring mineral, so chemical, especially in this area. So that's pretty common, but sometimes it's in there, and we need to reject most of those loads, most of those jobs, because they don't meet our criteria. So what happens if the job is approved, they have enough sampling for every 500 yards or 650 tons or so. And once a month, there's a third-party random testing agency, another LSP that was approved by DEP, that comes out unannounced and samples. And those are the loads that get removed. Now, obviously, we can't check every single load, but there's quite a bit of testing done on each site. There's a whole background check. Like I said, it's about 280 to 300 pages per submittal package for the soil. And So back to the question, is every load inspected? Yes, but every load is not tested. Each test is about, $500 to $600, so, it gets costly on the other end. And it's the DEP's policy, and that's what we follow, and everything gets uploaded to DEP once a month. There's hard copies kept on site, and everything else is uploaded to a Google Drive, to DEP once a month, that's signed off by all LSPs. So, it's a pretty thorough process. There's really no way to fill this area in, or any project for that matter. It protects everybody. What they're trying to do is get rid of the clean fill wanted sign at the end of the road, really. And they want it monitored, so it's, the stuff that comes in, we know about it ahead of time. It's scheduled, we know how many trucks, we know from where, we know how many loads they're gonna take. Every load has a signed tracking, number on a, they call it material shipping, summary, material tracking summary. So there's a paper trail all the way back, and like I said, everything's here, and even the loads that go out that are rejected, like in the wintertime, some guy thought it was a good idea to put oil in his trailer so the load would come out. Well, it wasn't such a great idea. We got loaded back out. We take a weight, so we know what came in, and that the same amount goes out, and it goes back to the site, and they take care of it. There's a certain amount of time that we have to get rid of that, and if there's any questions, comments, if you're curious about something, John Fitzgerald will answer all the questions, but I think we got hit back in November for a couple violations because the testing, some stuff came in, the third-party tester came like the end of October, or the early October, but towards the end of November, and nothing really came in November, but something came in the end of October, so that dinged us for not, because it wasn't in it was in a month that there wasn't a third-party test, so that was one violation. I think that was our only violation, as far as I know, so one monthly report, and that was the second month when we started, so, but by all means, John Fitzgerald, he's the one that comes up with these soil management plans, and he doesn't miss a thing, and it's all checked, double checked, and then the third party check, but obviously we can't check every piece of material that comes in, but I do have say on what comes in, because, eventually we need to build on this, so it's not anyone can bring anything, it's not like that at all. It's, believe it or not, we got a lot of stuff from New Hampshire, Manchester, and very limited Boston and Cambridge. There's not much stuff coming out of there at all, and all the jobs are listed on those links that Kathy mentioned. So, but what this is going to do is going to bring up that abandoned sand pit back to the elevation, and I believe Concom is interested in taking stewardship of that land. The Fish and Game wanted us to ask the local boards or commissions, including Parker River, if they would be interested before DFW took stewardship of the property after. So it'll never be built. There's 1.3 out of 10.6 acres that'll be used for storm drainage, and that's it. Everything else will be put in open space in perpetuity, with about, I believe, 5 acres of new habitat. So it's, we went through, like I said, we went through natural heritage. We're getting, we got the approval for the CMP, and we got the notice of project change from MEPA, and the last thing is the ACO amendment with John Fitzgerald. But you guys should all have that back in January in a package, but I hope that answers any questions.
Can you hold on to for some questions?
Yeah.
Mike, go ahead.
You said each load is not tested, but each load is inspected. Who's doing the inspection of each load?
So we have a camera. Actually, I'm here now. You can see the monitors behind me. We could see right in the trailer, so the girl or myself, if I'm here in the scale house, can see the load coming in. And then the operator out back. There's an operator here. Whenever this truck's coming, we have an operator. And if I'm not here, which this time of year I'm not, go back at work. if it's not what they represented, you know, we just call and that's it, no more, you know, we throw it back on. So every load is looked at.
Is it looked at just through the camera, or is it physically looked at in the truck? Or both?
It's physically looked at before he gets up to the dumping area. My guy will climb on the trailer and actually look in the truck and then bring it to an area where he wants to place it, which is usually all, you know, it's all one lift at a time typically. So, and if it, you know, it's right in front of him on the ground afterwards, so he sees every load. He's running the bulldozer and the compactor, so he sees every load. And if anything is questionable, you know, he keeps the truck there and we'll get whoever needs to be involved. But for the most part, you know, it's people aren't coming in here with pure sludge. It's, you know, I know the job before it comes. I'll typically go and look, see the pile first, because it needs to be compactable. And, so no one's trying to pull equipment. They just want to move material off the site. These are from larger scale projects. You know, no one's pulling in with their little, you know, dump truck from doing a new house down the street. You know, people know the deal. They don't want to bring something here that has to go back to the site. They don't. It doesn't. You know, they've all learned that the hard way. So it's, for the most part, it does not happen. Once in a while, you'll get something that's wet because it's in a stockpile. We'll make a call, you know, that they have to do a better job, but, you know, can't have any free liquid in it. But that's typically the worst part. But every load is inspected. It's just not dumped around a corner and hidden. It's all worked as it comes in.
Mike, all set?
Yep.
Bill?
Nothing right now.
No, Kathy?
No, I guess, in my conversations on email with Mr. Fitzgerald, he suggested that we could, let him know our concerns, and that could be included in any new letter.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we might need some time on that.
What did you have?
May I ask him a question?
Sure.
Bill, so are you still operating under the conditions the board implemented in January 2018? The general condition list, is that still what you're operating under for anything new, or would you like us to vote new conditions?
Whatever you guys want to do. I mean, you know, Fitzgerald wanted any comments or conditions you'd like to add for the project, and if you want to use the original one as the base to add to it, that's fine. You know, I think I just renewed the bond again. I saw something come across my desk for the performance bond for the streets. That should be all right. However you want to do it, it doesn't matter, man.
I got a couple questions. Bill, if every load is inspected or tested, the loads that are tested, they're tested on site, and they're also, if I understand it correctly, tested before they leave the point of origin?
So how it works is, say there's a site, we just had Lowell Courthouse, Lowell built a new courthouse. They have 500-yard stockpiles maximum. They will pull samples out of each stockpile. When those results come back, we'll have stockpile 1, stockpile 2, stockpile 3, with all the results. If all those results are less than our acceptable criteria, then those 3 stockpiles can come in. So there'll be 3 or 4 tests for those stockpiles, and that's probably 60 loads, 65 loads. But when they take a sample, they take it throughout, they take a little bit in like 15 spots of the pile. So they try to get representative samples. So it's all stockpiled on site, tested, and then submitted on to like sometimes if 3 stockpiles, maybe stockpile 1 and stockpile 3 are less than the criteria for Sewell Street, but stockpile 2 may have to go to a landfill in Worcester or Durham, New Hampshire or something because it has something in it. There's a lot of that.
Can you, when you first started, you mentioned that some trash, and you mentioned hot top. How does hot top get through? I thought you couldn't bury hot top. That had to be sent back to be reclaimed.
Yeah, so we're allowed up to 5%, or not we, the ship, wherever it's coming from, it's 5% de minimis material that they call it, so it could be hot top concrete, not really trash, but, you know, a piece of hot top gets in the edge of a road, it busts off out of the parking lot, it happens. It's not full loads of hot top, it's less than 5%.
But less than 5% of the whole load?
Yes, yeah, and typically you don't get any in most loads, but depending on where you're at, like you might get a piece of a sign footing in a load, or an old chunk of a footing in a load of concrete. You know, that happens. They don't know. They just get scooped up by large equipment. But for the most part, there isn't any, but the allowable is 5%, but you get little broken off pieces, and I would say that's coming from the edges of parking lot or roads. It's not, you know, they're not stripping parking lots and throwing the hot top in by any means.
Well, I'm kind of concerned that we're allowing trash and hot top. Hot top has got oil in it. We're allowing trash and hot top to be dumped on our aquifer, which
Well, there's no trash.
well, you mentioned, when you first started, you mentioned trash and hot top.
When I first started where?
When you first,
This conversation?
when you first started your presentation, you mentioned that it was hot top and trash dumped in the project.
No, it could be
What
5%.
so 5%, we can throw 5% trash, 5% trash and 5% hot top in there?
Well, there's no trash coming in, but it's hot top, concrete, wood. But like I said, it's not typical.
And can you explain how this December 1st, 2019, if it's inspected or looked at before they leave the site, and to get to Sewell Street, how did these containers of motor oil, black material as they call it, with motor oil, how did that get in there if they looked at it?
Well, like I said, the guy that was in the winter was cold, so he was putting it in the bed of his truck, so the load would come out, it wouldn't freeze to the truck.
Oh, he actually used oil in the base of the truck
Yeah,
to
he used
slide the
oil
material out.
Yeah, so the load would slide out of the truck, it wouldn't freeze
Crisco?
to the steel trailer.
Like Crisco, he greased it so it would slide out better?
Well, then he started using vegetable oil after he had to haul that load back.
Because he realized that using motor oil was probably not a good
Yeah,
idea.
I mean, well, at least get rid of the cans, you know, the jugs. But, so, that got put right back on him immediately, and, you know, I called my LSP on that one, so that's.
Any questions for, any more questions for Bill Daly, or should we hear from Conservation? Is there Mike Dempsey on there?
Yep.
Kathy, do you have a question for Bill? Okay.
All right, Bill, I'm going to put you on mute for now, but we'll come back
Sure,
after. Yeah, so Mike Dempsey, there's a couple other conservation, but they said they'll defer to Mike. So Mike, you are unmuted.
Mike, you there?
Nope. He's here, but there's no sound coming from his microphone.
Is that him I hear snoring?
Stephanie, I don't know if you want to speak? Oh, Mike's trying. He's working on it.
You can't hear me?
We can now.
Now we can, thank you.
Okay. So, Thank you for letting me offer some comments. So I guess what I would like to ask the board to do is to request that DEP give us a 30-day extension to offer townwide comments to DEP on this, because I just heard about it when the agenda for the meeting came out. We're not on any list that we get anything regarding activities there at the site or whatever. And, you know, just sitting down yesterday when Kathy asked me some questions by email, I came up with about 20 questions that I had regarding the work. So just to err on the side of caution, I would say Lee is proposing almost twice as much fill be brought in. So I think we should be just careful and make sure we look at it closely about potential impacts on the town and our water supply.
Any questions or comments to Mike? Anybody? No?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
Did you have any participation in the first phase of this, or not, as a Conservation Commission?
The only, we met with, twice, we met with Mr. Daly and the other town departments to be able to put our 2 cents in. So we did have some input then, yes.
Okay, because I didn't find any documentation of that. You know, it's.
Yeah, I don't have it either, so I don't know what we said then.
Okay, because this, Mr. Fitzgerald is looking for our input, that's clear. So you want us to ask him for 30 days to give
Yeah,
some time?
I would say that's reasonable.
I think additional time is a good idea. I don't feel that myself, I'm that fully informed on this.
Mike? Mike, you still there?
Yes.
How concerned, if you can speak on it, maybe you need to think about it. It says here, the soil may be slightly impacted, so we might be getting slightly impacted soil on our aquifer. And I know that water is a precious commodity. We certainly don't want anything out there that's going to get into into our wells. How concerned are you about that?
Well, I think it's a long-term problem, potential problem, I should say. Obviously, if the materials are being tested and we know that there's, say, a very small amount of some organic material or lead or arsenic that's buried there, and how long is it going to take to leach out of the site and end up down in our aquifer, which is about a mile away? You know, that's not going to happen, even under very good conditions. That's not going to happen in a year or two. It's probably going to take 10 years or something. So, but it's still something to be concerned about. 10 years from now, if all of a sudden lead starts showing up in our wells, what are we going to do about it?
Thank you. Kathy?
Yeah, follow up to what you just said, and again, I'm just beginning to try to understand this whole thing. They mentioned that they have test well sites at this place, but I don't think we're getting any results from the test well sites yet, or they're not documented. I don't know when they're gonna test the water at those sites.
Would you like to ask Bill if he has
That might be a
information?
Bill question, but I mean, I guess I'm just throwing out there that that was mentioned in some of the, there's a lot of documentation on this, and I feel myself personally, trying to look through it really quickly for tonight, but I was pretty blown away by it all. It's a lot of information.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe the wells, according to the plan, are tested annually and will be tested finally 2 years after the project completes. But Mr. Daly can correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
Do you want me to unmute Bill? Do you
Yeah,
want-
actually had a question
Okay.
for Bill.
Yeah,
Bill, go ahead if you have that information.
Yeah, no, Mike's right. So there's 8 wells on the site. We have 2 up high that, just so we know what type of groundwater is coming in, and the rest of all around the site, so we know what's going out. As far as lead and stuff like that, that's, we're not allowed to take any with high lead readings. I refer back to DEP, that the only way to really work with any type of fill site, no matter how big or small, is under this similar soils policy, because otherwise there's no testing. You don't know, like, we all know Valley Screw, that's beautiful sand and gravel all throughout that whole area over there, and it's a Superfund site, but you would never know by looking at the material that's back there, all that fine sand. So it's really the only way to do something like this and protect everybody. So when you do get lead, a lead reading somewhere, we have all the paperwork to show that nothing came in with high levels, and otherwise there's no backup. But I do want to reiterate, the board wants to take 30 days to get all the comments or conditions together. That's not a problem. But back in January, 7 boards and commissions got this full package of the notice of project change. And like I said earlier, I have my MEPA certificate, and the agreement with Natural Heritage for that area over there already. But everything is through the DEP underneath that similar soils policy, and it is a lot of work. It is a lot of material and information to take in. And back to the monitoring wells, Mike is right. They're tested annually, and they stop being tested 2 years after the project. Will I go 5? I don't mind 5. And then getting the aquifer, I really don't think is an issue at this point, because the people before us, put all the clay in. Very hard for anything to perk out here, and we're going to be up so high above the aquifer that I don't see any issues. But if the town wants to keep the monitoring wells in use for a little while longer, I don't have a problem with that. I would just put that in with the conditions. So, but just to reiterate the fact that the similar soils policy with the ACO through Mass DEP, it's really the only way to fill these sites legally. Anything else is at risk. And John Fitzgerald will be the first one to tell you that this process eliminates the clean fill wanted sign at the end of the street. I know we talked about it before, and I know the wording is when they talk about impact of soils and oil contained soils and stuff like that. I know it's scary to read, but it's the only policy in place for a place like this. So everything that comes here is clean. It's not landfill material. It's not out of state material. It's not heavily contaminated. It's not contaminated at all, really. It's just coming from a site that they want to put it in a place where it could take large quantities of soil all in one place, instead of 1,000 jobs going to 10,000 different places. It's kind of why they put this policy in place, and it's not perfect, because like we talked about earlier, you can't test every single shovel full of dirt, but it is their protocol, and Fitzgerald's on top of it. I mean, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, you get fined, and that's it. But but like I said, everything's inspected, it's looked at, and it's tested randomly once a month, after it's been tested and approved by two other people. So, but the board, I don't have a problem with the board taking 30 days to put something together, for Fitzgerald at all, but I just want the board to also keep in mind that this already went through the MEPA process. There was a comment period there where nothing came in. No comments came in from any board, so,
Did we, I never saw that.
that's.
I don't
Mis-
recall, but I
Mr.
was still
Daly?
coming.
I don't think we saw, whatever you're referring to in January, I don't recall this board having a large packet that we had to review. It's certainly not this agreement and the bond and all, certainly not that. So I'm not sure where this fell through the cracks. But we didn't see something and not pay attention to it. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So this is the first time that I've seen, I'm on the board since last May, and this is the first time that I've seen this document as far as the agreement and the quarry. And I'm well familiar with the quarry, and I know that it's a hazard the way it is. I guess I had a question about, it shows on the reports that they screen the results at the place that you get the fill from, and then we have this third-party tester tests it and still finds a problem. And can you explain that? Like, why is it okay at the other site but not okay when the third-party tester comes in?
He's just not testing the same exact pile, or, so they have a stockpile of 20 loads of dirt that the guy's pulling 15 little handfuls out of, and it tests out okay. Well, one of those 20 loads is off to the side on my site, and the third party, the random test, grabs 50 different handfuls out of that one. Not necessarily the same exact stuff the first guy grabbed, and but like I said, it just
Right.
it's not perfect
It's
science.
Right, okay, I understand that, and Mr. Fitzgerald has been trying to educate me a little more too about it, like the level of, he said the level that we're looking at it here is so that a child could actually eat a handful of dirt. Does that sound like, that's what he said in his email to me.
They call it less than RCS1. What that means is reportable conditions.
Okay,
So all the soil coming in here is under a reportable condition.
okay, so why then again, I haven't looked through all your notifications, but in one instance I saw that it was documented that you would no longer accept fill from this site, but I know there were a couple other examples I went through quick where it didn't seem like the site itself was prohibited after there was a finding to return a load. Can you explain that
Sure.
process?
So like I said earlier, I have the final say whether I want it or not. And
Okay,
if I don't like the material that's coming in and it passed and it took the guy, 15 phone calls to get him to send the truck back here to load it out on, because if, after a week I get fined, so he has to come and get it, or I gotta bring it to him. It's gotta go back to that site. So if someone's problematic in that regard, then I don't want any more of that dirt. I'm all set, but it happens. It's like I said, you can't test every little thing. So, and the same could happen in your backyard. I would bet. You'd never get the same results if you took 4 shovelfuls, 4 different spots in your backyard. It would be different. So, but as far as that site, I don't remember exactly what site it was, but I just made the call that no more for you, and that's why other sites, it's just it just something got picked up on, and that was it. It could be a fluke too. Sometimes there could be a piece of asphalt ground up in the sample that got tested, and it could have a limit, and the lab will have to go back and look at it sometimes. So it's all through the LSPs and the labs, and there's limits, and it's the same across the board for everybody. So it's not like I can take more than this guy, or it's all the same limits, so it's all a level playing field for everybody, and there's no cheating it. And the number's the number, so I can't approve soil that has a detection above my acceptance criteria. It just can't be done. My LSP won't do it. Even though he's the LSP for the site, it's his responsibility. He's not gonna do something even if I tell him to. That's his license, it's his insurance, it's his stamp. So they look at it, you know, they look at it deeply, and it takes them about a week to approve each package. And a lot of times, there's a lot of back and forth between it, so, we have the say on what we want. If someone tells us it's great soil gets approved and it comes in and it's junk, then that's it. We don't take it anymore. We're not obligated to take it all. We have the final call on it. So, if you want to bring junk with oil and stuff like that, then you're gonna do it once and it's gonna get loaded back out and that's the end of it. So, I hope that answered your question.
It is, it's a lot of information, but thank you, no, it's helpful, to know that. So, you thought that we received a packet in January and knew about this?
I know all the boards did. There's 7 packages went out there, for the notice of project change, and all the plans are on the website with zoning anyway, showing the new parcel that we acquired last June, so, once you went to MIPA sends it out, you know, to all not all the departments, but
Yeah.
at least 5, 6, or 7 of them.
Well, we're not really a department. We're kind of,
I think the selectmen get it, I think.
We're a big deal.
Concom, I think Board of Health, I'm not.
well, I'm saying this is the first documentation I've seen on this, was the letter from Mr. Fitzgerald.
Could we ask Mike Dempsey if Conservation got that?
He said they did not.
He's not on there? They did not get it either?
He sent me a message and said they did not receive it.
Okay. So Selectmen didn't get it, and at least Conservation didn't get it, Bill.
Well, I could check with me and get the CC list from them on
Massachusetts Environmental
what
Protection.
that's sent to whom, so
I don't
I
know.
could check it, but that's fine, I mean, it's,
Why not get a list of who they sent it to, the departments that they sent it to?
I will.
Okay. And while you're still on the phone, could we get an updated copy of your performance bond for Sewell Street?
I think I just mentioned that, I think I just renewed it, you should have got it within the past week or so.
Well, the last one that we have here, or at least that I have, is until May 22nd, 2019. And in addition, how about an updated copy of the certificate of insurance naming the town as additionally insured?
Yep, that's no problem.
Okay. Any questions for Bill? Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, Mr. Daly, Bill O'Neill here. Did you say that you're only getting fill from within the state?
No, he said
No,
Manchester.
we get some from New Hampshire.
And do they have the same testing requirements that we have in Mass?
Yeah, actually, they're a little stricter in some regards and a little more lenient in others, but it all depends on location.
Okay,
We got some stuff out of Manchester,
Portsmouth,
that's all tested the same way.
okay. Now, under the general conditions that we set up way back in January of
Yeah.
2018, number 10 is R&D will copy town and all DEP correspondence. To the best of your knowledge, are you keeping up with that condition number 10?
It's all online, and everything's on file here, so, like I said, every package is at least 280 pages.
Okay,
And most of it's chemical, testing results with narrative, but it's all, on a Google Drive, so.
Anybody else?
I'm good.
I'm good. With
me.
Bill, anybody got any questions for Mike Dempsey?
Mike, do you have anything further? does not.
No,
Denise, did you say there was some others on there that want to weigh in?
Does anyone else want to speak on this topic? Nope, I guess that's a no.
No. Okay. Somebody want to make a motion to go with Mike Dempsey's recommendation, 30 days, asking for 30 days extension?
I don't know that you need to ask for, I mean, we can certainly reach out, but I don't see on the letter that came in a date on which they're looking for comments. So I don't know that you need to actually ask for an extension, but we can certainly reach out and let them know when we plan to have it.
That
Yeah,
require a
well-
motion,
Well, the next to the last sentence here, does the board, selectmen wish to provide any comments or conditions on the proposed expansion? So at least we should send it to John Fitzgerald that would like to,
Get a 30-day or something.
We need like 30 days to collect comments. I mean, we'd like to talk to our water and sewer department. Evidently, we weren't copied on things. I think we need to make that clear. We did not receive documents. Conservation did not receive documents. Maybe everything was just stored online on that link that I went to, and we were supposed to go there. I don't know.
So what are we looking for, a 30-day extension?
yeah, we probably should have some kind of a vote that we want to ask for a 30-day extension.
What the hell is that?
I
Meeting
have
is
no
We in
idea.
another meeting?
What's happening?
No, it's me,
Oh,
sorry.
Oh, he's on the,
I'm gonna put you back on mute.
he must be on the high school building committee meeting.
Oh, yes,
that
you're on the high
we're
school
supposed to
building
be on this
committee.
Saturday, 6:30.
All right, so
Okay.
motion to
I
have
got
a
really
30-day
spooked.
extension to gather more information, is that what we're looking for?
That's what we're looking for. Second on that?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? None. All in favor? Unanimous.
I
Next.
also would like to know what happened to those other correspondence we were supposed to get in
Yeah,
January,
well.
because it seems none of us recall ever seeing this, so.
I usually would remember something that.
I mean, a lot has happened in the last 4 months, but
Right, well, and I had said to Mike, when he said he didn't get it, I was still out part-time, so I don't know if it came here and didn't get to me, I'm not really sure. Rebecca has a copy of it, and she said it came hard copy, so I'll scan it and send it off to you all.
Next, a budget and town meeting workshop, votes may be taken. Rennie Carroll, Highway Superintendent, to discuss the sweeper lease proposal.
I'm gonna
Rennie, if
unmute.
you're still here,
He's still there.
you're up.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Yes, loud and clear.
Excellent. So we have, I've given, Denise has a revised proposal for agreement between us and the town of Georgetown for the purchase and use of a sweeper. I think we've gone over this before. We roughly pay in between $16,000 and $18,000 a year to sweep once annually, which is usually in the spring, and then also periodically when we have paving projects that go on, the roads need to be swept before we put down our final top coat. So this would expand the services to the town of Groveland as well as Georgetown. We're kind of working out a deal with CN Wood through Sourcewell Purchasing Power to do this. It really comes down to the board agreeing to it today and then coming up, if I'm saying it right, Denise, with a agreement and having town council draft something for us that binds Georgetown and Groveland in the contract.
Rennie, could you also address, under the stormwater management, the requirements for the street sweeping?
Yes, that would also, it would also keep us within the requirements for us sweeping twice a year. Right now, we only sweep once. In the fall, you're supposed to sweep it will also help with stormwater management, keeping our catch basins cleaner. As we all know, in the fall, we have the leaves drop, they get in the catch basins, they clog the catch basins. They certainly cause, minor and major street flooding, when we get heavy torrential rains. I can't even tell you how many numerous amounts of times that the highway department's out there clearing catch basins on the roads constantly during this time. So the man hours would be cut down significantly for us to not have to go out there by hand and do this constantly, where we could address that issue in a more broader situation with this street sweeper.
Anybody got any questions for Rennie? Mike? You're up.
As far as buying this sweeper, who is gonna work on it when it needs repairs?
So that will most likely come down to us. There is, and I've looked into this as well, we have a 1-year warranty on it. And extending that, I got a quote today for just under $8,000 to extend it to a 4-year. So basically, other than oil changes, filter changes, your normal routine maintenance, for 4 years, you really won't expect any major repairs to this piece of equipment. So, but Bill Green is obviously our mechanic, and we have, these because they don't have the experience, they will be trained. Any mechanic that works on it will be will receive some training as well from CN Wood and Elgin.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment, is that from what I understand, that this is a specialized piece of equipment and not a typical
Absolutely.
maintenance person can just go in and repair things on it, which brings me to the next question is, who's gonna drive it? Because from what I understand, you have to be trained on driving it. It's not just gonna be someone who is capable of driving a truck or a backhoe is gonna hop in this thing and be able to drive it without, causing significant repair issues on it.
It does take, there is a little bit of a knack that goes to it. Operating one myself for years, they are pretty simple operation, and they're not, although they're quick turning, they're not very fast. We've all been stuck behind the street sweeper trying to get to work or trying to get away from work. So they're not, there will definitely be some training that goes on, but it really, just like any other piece of equipment, it takes some time in the seat to really get a general knowledge for how to operate it properly. But, we do have some really good, talented highway personnel that I feel are very, very much up to the challenge.
And where is it gonna be stored?
It will be stored at our garage inside during the operating season, and then it'll go out. It'll be winterized, and it will be still inside, but just to the outside. The cold station, the cold storage area outside.
And when Georgetown has it, I'm assuming that'll be the same case?
Same case, yes, correct.
Okay. That's it for now.
Kathy, anything?
Yes, what's the expected life of this equipment, given it's being shared between two towns?
So the ones that, and I've done a lot of research on this, the ones that I've looked at that were used, that we looked into purchasing, were like 2012, 2011. So they're 8 or 9 years old. These are also pieces of equipment that were in much larger venues, cities and towns. Haverhill, Andover was one. I forget the other town. There was 3 we looked at that were, relatively close to our area, but obviously much larger cities and towns where they had road miles 2-3 times in excess of ours, even compared with Groveland. With Georgetown. So you're talking about cities and towns that have over 100 road miles. And that won't be the case for us. So you're looking at pieces of equipment, vehicles that are, 8-9 years old before they really trade these vehicles in. And then they typically, big cities and towns will, purchase another one and use that as a trade-in bargaining chip at that point.
So what do we expect the usage life of the equipment to be?
I expect for our sharing and
Yes.
the care that will go on with it to exceed 10 years, 10 to 12
10
years.
10 to 12 years. And that cost of 37,000 would be shared equally?
Correct.
Okay. This agreement is, it's kind of just like an outline, isn't it? It's not
This
really.
would
an
have to go to
agreement.
council.
Okay.
This is just what the two
Yeah, it's
towns
not
were
legal.
discussing.
Not a legal document by any
yeah,
means.
I'm
It's
just,
the outline of how we'll manage.
Yeah, I was looking at the paragraph on a conflict and how you would settle that. And I thought that was something you'd seen in another agreement, or if that's something that you just kind of came up with?
I wanted there to be a way where if, right now I'm working with Peter Durkee. We have a great working relationship. We both, understand, but that might not always be the case. If Peter ends up going to another place or isn't there in 4 years or 5 years, this kind of will take away from us or the superintendents, having an argument about it. It will just be like, hey, it's in the agreement. Here's the answer, you know what I mean? So it'll kind of take away from
Okay.
having that conflict.
So, will there be a cost of getting our people trained on this? Will we have a cost of this?
I think, I've talked to Catherine about this. I think that I'm under the assumption, and I'm pretty sure I'm correct on this, that when you spend, I think the total, I'm just looking at it here. When you spend $229,000, they kind of give you the training for the personnel. I've actually already talked to her about having a demo set up prior to the purchase. So she'll come out and they'll come out with a very similar piece of equipment, give us a demo for it, and also do some training as far as getting some seat time on it at that point. They have a demo that they'll give to cities and towns to go through this process.
So they don't need like a certification or anything that they have to be sent out to at all?
No, it's really just on the job type of training. Like I said, they'll get the ins and outs on the operation of the vehicle, and then it'll come down to experience and seat time at that point.
Okay, I think that's all I have. Thanks.
Anybody else? Bill, go ahead.
Rennie, cost, 50/50, 60/40, 70/30, how is that
It's
split?
gonna be 50/50.
50/50. How many linear road miles in Georgetown, do you know?
Just a little bit more than us. We have, Chapter 90 only has us just under 50, but I know there's slightly over 50 miles when you get into the neighborhoods. And Georgetown has about 52, so it's not, they're very comparable.
Go, Bill.
And do we sweep all the streets or just the Chapter 90 streets?
No, we sweep the whole town, including, all our, the pines, all our parking lots and facilities, the water department, the new water department will get swept, Groveland Light and Electric gets swept. So we really do everything.
And Georgetown only has 2 more linear miles than Groveland?
Yep.
That just doesn't sound right.
Are we looking for just a motion to move this forward? To the
Why
next-
doesn't it just, that just doesn't sound right. Seems like Georgetown is,
I don't know what their road miles are, so, I mean, they might be
Much
larger in land, but their road miles may be equivalent. I don't
What
know.
does West Newbury have?
I don't know.
Randy, what does West Newbury have, do you know?
West Newbury has about 60 miles.
And what do we have?
50, he said, and Georgetown 52?
West Newbury has more road miles than Groveland?
That makes sense.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking the Newburyport. West Newbury has less.
Okay, because West Newbury told me on Friday that he only pays $8,000 a year to sweep his streets. So I'm assuming it's
Well, if
less
it's
than us.
8,000 for West Newbury, and we're paying 16,000 for Groveland, and there's not a huge difference, why aren't we getting a better price for just paying that yearly cost instead of buying a new machine?
That was gonna be my question.
I beat you to it.
I would say, because West Newbury doesn't sound like they're sweeping every street.
He told me they sweep every street but once a year, and he recently put it out to bid, and it's $8,000 a year, is what he pays.
And are we doing it once a year or twice a year? Once a year.
Currently once a year.
So we're not that much different than West Newbury, but we're paying twice as much.
I mean, I really don't know.
Is that what the numbers are telling us?
I don't know what they have for miles. I'm trying to find it, but I don't know where to find it online.
You'd have to go to like
They got a
municipal
large remote area in West Newbury.
Department of, Local Services. They would have it.
For
I think it's
road
a better
miles, I
use
don't
of
think they
time
have
if
it.
They're in that
Get a
chart.
better
I mean, you have to go look. It would take a minute or two. It'd take more than a minute right now to look it up.
Yes. I guess,
that Georgetown has 55.86 miles is the Chapter 90 appointment is. I was told it was about 60, but it's 55.86. Groveland, I know they have us at 39, but it's working with Rebecca. I'm pretty sure we're up over 47 road miles as far as what we're tallying for appointments.
okay, therein lies my
So
point.
they have roughly about 10 miles more, give or take.
So, I guess that's to my point. If we were equal in miles, 50-50 maintenance, use, fuel, et cetera, would make sense. But if they actually use the machine 10% more than we do, then we're actually subsidizing Georgetown, which the taxpayers of Groveland can't afford to subsidize any other town. We can only afford to subsidize Groveland.
It's not even, it's
Well, 39 to 55
seven,
is more than 10%.
six or 7 miles. It's about 6 or 7 miles difference between us and them. And that's just what the appointment is. I know that there are roads that aren't counted, private roads that do get swept only because of our stormwater infrastructure, so it's less than 6 miles that is the difference. I mean, it's not, you're right, are we paying slightly more because of that? I mean, I couldn't push the numbers, but it wouldn't be, the cost can't be all that dramatic.
If it's $1, no taxpayer in Groveland should subsidize anything for any taxpayer in any other town or any other city, regardless. We're not in the charity business. We shouldn't be in the charity business. If it's going to be shared, it should be shared in a mathematical way where we each pay what we use, not necessarily 50-50. It may be that Groveland has more linear miles than Georgetown. In that case, I wouldn't mind Georgetown subsidizing us, I shouldn't say that, but you can understand what I'm getting at. I don't want the Groveland taxpayers to be on the hook for something that benefits Georgetown and not Groveland.
Right.
The benefits of this will far outweigh the few miles of road more that Groveland has. I mean, being able to sweep the town twice, being able to address incidents that will happen. We have a lot of contractors that come through town that, will dump stuff on the road, and the guys are out there in a public, on a roadway trying to sweep it up by hand right now. Or they're out there with a small machine doing something that, I'm just saying that the machine itself will outweigh that the town is taking on. Or we can simply look into adjusting what gets paid, what amount gets paid to who. Maybe we do a 45-55 adjustment to the payments, if Georgetown's okay with that. I myself personally, I know that even though I'm looking at what Mass Chapter 90 has us down for road miles, I know that the town of Groveland has more miles than they're paying us for in our abortion, our appointment. But it's just not, it just hasn't been, it did get updated 2 years ago, but it just hasn't really been updated as of recent.
Mike, go ahead. Bill, you all done? I'm sorry, Bill, you all done?
I'm all done. I just want to make sure that the taxpayers and the residents of Groveland are getting a fair shake. And even if it's $1, you know, I understand you live in Methuen, so it's not going to affect your taxes, but it will affect the taxes of the property owners in Groveland. And those are the people that I'm responsible. I'll get the phone calls from. Those are the people that I'll get the emails from. Those are the people that I have to answer to. And those are the people that I want to give the right answer, that we're not subsidizing not one penny for anyone else's benefit other than Groveland. That's my main concern.
Yeah, I have that very same concern too, Bill. I don't take lightly what the taxpayers in Groveland pay right now, and I certainly am looking to up the level of service for the high tax-paying residents of Groveland. That's one of my main objectives.
Mike?
Yeah, but looking at the numbers and what Bill had said, a 45-55 split looks to be more appropriate. But have you gone the other route and tried to get another quote for the existing service? It just seems like there's a big disparity between what West Newbury pays and their linear roads and what we pay versus our linear roads.
I have looked into it. Basically, every contractor that I talk to that has the sweeping equipment that would be appropriate, a newer style sweeper, everybody pretty much is right around $110 to $125 an hour. That's the way the service is paid out. So it just seems like when you start being on the cheap side of that, you know, I think we pay $120 an hour. I think anything less than that, you typically will get, you know, pieces of equipment that aren't doing the job properly. So, I mean, the pay as far as what you're giving these contractors is right in line. I think Denise had, West Newbury had said he paid $110 an hour or something like that. We pay $120. I mean, I know over the course of, you know, a week or two, that might be a little, you know, the monies might add up a little more, but it's not, the efficiency of the equipment that we use right now might also be that $10 more an hour change. I mean, I can't do the comparables, but they're all right in line with $110, $120 an hour.
Okay, ask a question.
Kathy, go ahead.
I guess, I think, Rennie, we need to clear up why West Newbury is able to get it done for $8,000. So we need that information. Like, we need to know who they use and how much they pay and why it's $8,000 if we've been contracting every year and paying $16,000 for the same service. I think we need to clear that up.
I can answer some of that. So Wayne is the DPW director in West Newbury, and he sent me his agreement. It's with American Sweeping Company. It is for $110 an hour, and he told me it's about $8,000. He said it's about 2.5 weeks. According to the Chapter 90 mileage, they have 45.87 miles in West Newbury as of 2018.
46 miles. and we
So
got
a $10
47.
an hour rate change would not explain doubling the
So we got 1 mile more. is what-
He told me he went out, this is March 11th, 2020 is the result of his bid when he went out to bid for it. So I did speak to, he sent me some documents, and I did speak to him on the phone on Friday.
Rennie, you still there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just looking at the cost, you know, we're looking at for 7 years, 37,705, and 6 years for about 5,200 more. we could get it paid off in 6 years. Was there any thoughts to that?
As far as the length of the lease, the number was, it just made it was a little, at 7 years, the number was a little closer, or it was right on point with what we basically spent when we split it in half. So, yeah, I mean, you could certainly bump it up to the 6 years, but then we would have to talk about doing another increase on what was allotted for that purchase.
Right, so the board voted 15,000 under capital for a used street sweeper. So again, if you approve this, you have to go back and amend your capital plan because you approved 15 for the used street sweeper.
And the,
I think we talked about already extending that to 18 for this one anyways, if I'm saying that correctly.
Right, but the board has not taken any action on that.
so, Rennie, on looking at that figure of 15, and that's only sweeping the street once. So if under the stormwater management you have to do it twice, we really should have double that particular figure.
Yes, and that number that we have from West Newbury, I'm not there, so I don't know what they sweep, but I pretty closely watched the Hawk go at our town day in and day out. He does a really good job. He hits every neighborhood, he hits every street, he hits every facility. I can't say that they do or don't do that in West Newbury, but I can only attest to what we do in Groveland, and everything gets touched. Every road mile gets touched by that sweeper, coming and going both sides. So he does do a pretty thorough job, and you know, when you do the math, 100, you know, he does it in, I think he does it in 16 days. Roughly it's $125, $120 a day, so you know, it's about $500 a day, I should say. And then West Newbury's doing it for $450 a day. So if he's doing all the linear miles that are out there, the number doesn't perfectly equate to where it should be. So I don't know how he's coming up with 8,000 and ours is that close to 16, or is 16.
So maybe, I thought, Denise, unless I misunderstood it, they do West Newbury in a week and a half,
He told me, no, 2.5 weeks.
2.5 weeks?
He told me.
That's
And I just want to clarify that I'm the stormwater management plan manager. I don't think it's required twice a year. I think it's recommended. I don't think I'm reading our plan now. I don't believe we are required to do a twice a year sweeping. I think it's recommended, but I don't think that that's part of our requirement. Yes, at least annually. Sweep all uncurbed streets annually is an annual requirement of our permit.
Is it possible for us to get what other towns are paying around us per road mile, to kind of put everything on the same basis so that we can I just don't know why we're so out of alignment.
I don't
That's
disagree, but if we want this to go to town meeting, we need town council to get involved, we need the other town, that's why, if you want this to go to town meeting as a lease,
I know.
we need to decide one way or another, because town council's gonna have to work with the two towns to come up with a legal agreement. It's gonna have to come back here, you're gonna have to vote it, then it's gonna have to go to town meeting. And I actually have to see that, I don't know what the company is.
If they're on the list, yeah.
Yeah, we have to see if they're on the state bid list.
I think there's too many variables that we should just
I don't
push
know
it
if
to
we
next
can
year.
just lease it, or if we have to go out to bid.
But, when we hire them to come in, obviously that's a bid.
But I have not bid it since I've been here,
Haven't been bid?
but it is, and
No,
it's required.
it's never been bid. It was on the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission bids, but they had trouble fulfilling it. And I know a few towns tried to use it. When I got here, everybody was screaming to have it swept. I just went with who Bob Arikalian was using for the past, I don't even know, 10, 15 years. He had been sweeping this town. So that's who I used. I tried to go out and get you know, exercise the ability to get, you know, a better price. It just wasn't, at the time, everybody was trying to, you know, everybody's trying to do the same thing at the same time. I was lucky enough that Hawk Jr. was in the neighborhood at the time, and he could sweep us, you know, in conjunction with another job he had. So it's not always, you know, I tried to do that bid process. Like I said, it just didn't work out. And it's never been bid, as far as I know.
So, if in fact West Newbury can do it for half the cost that we currently contract for, that would theoretically mean if we could get the same price as West Newbury, our payback on this lease would be
10 hours.
twice as long as originally anticipated. So if the payback was 10 years originally, we're looking at 20-year payback if we could contract the same services that West Newbury does at the same cost that West Newbury does.
Equals 11,000.
Or we could do it twice a year for the same cost we currently
That's
pay.
what I was thinking.
Right.
I like the twice.
And
a
not
year.
have to do the maintenance or anything.
And not have to do them, right, that's somebody else's problem, the driver, the maintenance, fuel, insurance, that's all on someone else. And that relieves us of any liability there.
At this point, I think there's just too many variables for me to prove this to move forward, so.
I concur.
Yeah, I mean, doing the numbers at $110 an hour, if they did it in 2.5 weeks, that's $11,000. So, I mean, the numbers don't lie, that's what it is, 110 times 100 hours is 11,000, yeah, 11,000.
You want to seek some more information on this, or how do you want to deal with this? How much time, Denise, do we have before we have to make a decision for the town warrant?
Today.
So I've already sent the draft warrant to council because we were getting past the point of them being able to review it. The warrant has to be published by May 20th, and we would need time to have an agreement drafted and go back and forth between the two towns before then.
I think we have too many variables right now to
I
get
agree.
this
There's
done
too
in
many-
time.
too many
For
things
thi-
that need to be
Not for
done.
this year's town meeting. I think we've now realized that the town has not gone out to bid on this service in a long time, so we don't know what the current prices are. So how can we compare that to a lease if we don't really know? You know what I'm saying? If we don't know what's out there, what's available, how can we tell our taxpayers this is a good deal?
I have another concern, in the
Yeah.
current state of economic uncertainty that we're facing, I'd hate to lock this town up for 7 years.
And then find out it's not a good deal.
Find out we're in trouble trying to pay for it.
Yep.
It seems like it's gonna lock us down for,
Just to be aware that of the ongoings, the money would be coming out of the budget that's currently in the highway department. That's where the money is coming from. So there will be no added to that. I mean, we spend, like I said, right now, I know I've only been at this a year, but we spent about $18,000 in sweeping last year. I mean, I can certainly work at trying to, you know, so-called pinch the pennies so we can try and get better at that. I'm sure there's ways to do that. And I hope that it doesn't affect the level of service, but we can certainly look into trying to, you know, slim down where we spend that money and then also revisit this at another time that is more economically feasible for us. I would prefer that we, because this is dragged on, I would prefer, you know, where we are now to either squash it all together or vote on it and let's move on to the next step because it's getting to, you know, we're almost into May and I'm also holding up another town. You know, I know we have plenty of other issues that we have to address as well. So I would prefer the board make a decision, yay or nay today, and then we can just, you know, we can also address it another time.
Is it possible for us to make a motion that you go out to bid for this contract for next year?
Well, we have to.
Yeah,
We are required to
I
bid it.
definitely
Okay,
think
because we
that's a
haven't
good
done
idea.
that, so I'd like to see that happen at least.
Yeah, I know that Merrimack Valley Planning Commission did do something last year. And I don't know if, I think what happened was not enough, cities and towns, jumped on board to make it economical for them, for them to do it. So, I definitely can look into that, and we can also put it out to bid to see where, that process goes too. I know we can also look into renting the machines, which I only found out recently, that there are companies that rent them, so we could potentially look into that as a cost-lowering, avenue.
Well, we could at least just go out to bid, right, for this current budget that we're just trying to finish out, we could have you go out to
Sure,
bid. Yeah,
absolutely.
let's just do that.
Yeah, I say we push it off a year and do the bid
So
process.
make a motion that we go out to bid on the street sweeper?
Did you say, I'm sorry, did you say you made a motion? or
Yeah,
you
make
asked?
a motion that we go out to bid on the street sweeper for next fiscal year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Let me clarify, we're not buying it, we're going out to
No.
Right.
rent the
You're going out to
service.
bid for the
To
service.
bid the
Yes.
services.
Thank
Just
you,
saying.
thank you for the language, Rennie. Yes.
All in favor? Unanimous. Next, still on, we're all set with Rennie. Thank you, Rennie.
Thank you, Rennie.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a good night.
We're on.
Stay safe.
Review of fiscal 2021 budget requests.
So I'm actually in the essence of time, and that we have some other stuff to discuss in executive session that will impact the 2021 budget request. Ask that you table that one item.
Okay.
Depending on where you stand with the warrant articles, there were some that you were holding. I don't know if you want to review those tonight, if you want to, but again, if we don't do it tonight, we have to do it. We'll have to add time at the next meeting.
You want to table that one to the next meeting?
Next meeting.
Well, I'd say at least the budget requests.
Yeah,
All right.
And then depending on how you feel about the warrant articles that you were holding from last meeting, if you'd like to,
Somebody want to make a motion to table the fiscal 2021 budget requests?
Motion to table review of fiscal year 2021 budget requests.
Is there
second,
a second?
second.
Second, not debatable. All in favor? Unanimous. Review draft town meeting warrant.
so, there were some that you were holding on. I know Bill Dark was going to be on the call, but I don't see him on there. I will tell you, I got an email, let me just open up my emails. I can't close that. I got an email from Dana Moody today, who's on the Board of Assessors, that he would like to see a plan regarding the assessor's office before he is in favor of any consolidation. He sent some questions that I can provide to the board, or I would just recommend you either just table those articles, or remove those articles from the warrant if you're not comfortable moving forward with them, which would be Article 8. Because I know you wanted some feedback from the Board of Assessors.
Why don't we table that part until till the selectmen get the questions that the member of the Board of Assessors has.
Okay. So then why don't we just table the next item altogether?
And that
Which
was?
is we'll just table the warrant. There's only a few other holdups that you were waiting on that had to do with the budget and collective bargaining, so
Okay.
if someone wants to
Table
motion.
the warrant article.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Unanimous. It is tabled. Finance Director's time.
I do not have anything for you.
Selectmen's time and reports. Kathy?
I'll postpone until the next meeting.
Bill?
Yeah, real quick, we do have an ongoing high school building committee meeting that's going on, taking place right now. Unfortunately, Denise and I have bigger things to do, so we're here. I would like to ask for an agenda item. Given the rather totally unanticipated and unexpected resignation of our chair, and given the extraordinary circumstances we find ourselves in at the moment, I think it may be prudent at this time to reorganize the Board of Selectmen until such time as we don't have an election really till the 15th of June. Is that's right? June 15th?
June 15th, correct.
So I'd like to see that as an agenda item for the next meeting. Currently, as I said, we're without a chair, given the circumstances and the unexpected nature of our chair's departure. I think a reorganization of the board would be prudent at this time to get us through the next couple of months anyways.
Okay, Mike, you got anything?
Yeah, just one thing. Last week, I was informed that our police chief is celebrating 30 years of service to Groveland.
Oh,
He didn't tell anybody, for whatever reason. He didn't want any recognition, I guess, for whatever reason. But 30 years of service to Groveland is kind of a big deal. So I bought some pizza and brought it over to the police department for the police to have
that's
lunch.
good.
But I just want to say thank you to Jeff. Amazing leadership over there, not only with the staff, the budget, and everything else you do. So
Thank you for 30 years of service. That's it.
Yeah, I have nothing. Old or unfinished business? Anybody? None. Correspondence, we have the police statistics, February 1st, 2020 to April 21st, 2020. And we have executive session.
So if someone would make a motion and a roll call to enter executive session, and you plan to adjourn an executive session, you will not return to the public meeting. And then we will close the public meeting.
motion to move into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, for the purpose of discussing strategies with regarding to collective bargaining agreements.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, Bill?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Kathy?
Yes.
Yes. Unanimous.
Chair, may we take a moment to, use a little boys' room?
Yeah, we'll have to
Sit there for a
disconnect
little-
everything anyway,
little
so.
bit.
Go ahead.
so- Yes.
I've been sitting
Thank you,
in a chair
Tracy.
for a day.